to do. There's kind of too many ways that we could go with any of the different sites, Blender Artists, Blender Nation, and any of the other sub-sites within the community.
Blender.org, obviously.
Yeah.
There are many international community sites as well that sometimes fall off the radar.
Right.
But for me at least. But
yes. Yeah. I don't speak any languages, so.
Yeah.
I guess I'll get started by asking a couple of questions of everyone that's here. I guess real quick, who is registered on either Blender Artist or Blender Nation? So, what? Well, I guess you used to be able to.
Yeah, you could.
Or at
you
least
don't really need to be anymore.
At least you visit Blender Nation. Okay, so basically most people. So some of the things that we want to do as far as the community as a whole is to interconnect the various different sites within the community much more closely. We have all these different sites, starting with Blender Artist and Blender Nation. Then there's things like BlendSwap, all the different tutorial sites, and all of these basically build up what is the Blender community. You know, obviously the key component is the people within the community, but we've got all these different sites that each offer something different or something similar in the case of tutorial and new sites and whatnot, but they're all basically individual. And so as a community, we would like to start integrating them a bit more closely, particularly with things like, you know, Blender Artist is the main forum or discussion area. Blender Nation is the main place to go for news. Then there's tutorial sites. There's services such as BlendSwap for finding all kinds of different models. There's renderfarm.fi for rendering. We have all these different sites that are completely individual, and we would like to start changing that in some ways if possible, along with a myriad of other things. But I guess for those of you that are registered on any one of the sites or an active user or visitor on any of them, are there anything or is there anything specific that really stands out that would basically make the sites not only better but more connected, more involved with the community, and help kind of bring the community together? Anything? Well, that's up for discussion.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we were talking about earlier is that, especially if you're a new user and you come to one of the several Blender sites, it's very difficult to know where you are exactly. And I often get questions that should be directed to Ton, for example. And so I was thinking like having like a map of the Blender community that's saying you are here now. You are in the news department and not in the artist or development or tutorial stuff. And I was wondering do you remember when you started out in the Blender community? Did you know where you are? Was it a confusing place to be, or? Uh-huh.
What time was Blender Nation at the time?
How do you feel about it now if you are on one website? Do you feel like you have to visit them all to know what's going on, or do you have one place that you go to every day?
Yeah.
Sorry? Oh, sorry.
Some guy presented a map of the Blender learning environment.
Of the Blender learning?
He called it the Blender learning environment. It was a map of forums, tutorial sites, sites,
Mm-hmm.
and also talk last year.
Okay. But that was a rather extensive map then, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was my mind map.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There is something like that on the blender.org website, where it lists the community sites, I guess, not specifically tutorials. Or you're shaking no?
I mean, it's partly maintained. I don't even know if people actively add websites, but there's also like 100 already. So how do you know where to go?
It's very outdated. I checked it a couple of months ago, and it's
It doesn't have.
It's pretty old. No.
The problem with these aggregator type of projects is that it's too hard to keep up with all these things that are being updated.
Tony is saying it's difficult to keep up with what happens in the Blender community for those kind of.
I try to do the aggregator website. So for me, I think Blender Nation I check regularly, and that's very good for news. Blender Artist has all this sort of support stuff, and then there's a lot of tutorial places that kind of
Yeah.
really. Some of them are really good and stay for a while. I think they get better known, and others kind of, I mean, over the years, they kind of come along. I'm kind of satisfied with Google and with the sites that keep updating and keep content refreshed. Google automatically sort of floats them up to the top anyway. Now I'm going to be quiet because I'm not sure I see a problem. I think it's okay.
That's
Well,
great.
I guess it's not so much a problem necessarily for veteran users who they know what to look for. You know, a large number of people in the room, or any of you that have been in the community for, I guess, more than a few months, probably know kind of where to go. You know, there's Blender Nation for news, there's Blender Artist for support and discussion, and any of the other sites that you tend to visit. But in the case of new users, you know, if you have a brand new Blender user that comes on day one, they download Blender and they open it up, and then what do? You know, if you want to go for tutorials, honestly, your best bet right now is probably just to Google it. But if we could somehow interconnect at least this sites that have proven to be sustainable, you know, in particular Blender Nation and Blender Artist, regardless of whether we stepped away tomorrow or not, they're probably going to stick around for quite a while. You know, they're in many ways self-sustaining now. Particularly Blender Artist, just by the nature of a form, we can, as long as the spam is removed and there's some sense of moderation, it's going to stick around for a while. Or at least we hope so. And so if we can interconnect some of the community sites a little bit more, then I think it would make it a lot easier for those users to not just get around, but to discover those different resources. And I've had a lot of discussion with multiple people over the last couple of days as far as, particularly on Blender Artist, how we can do that, or basically at what threshold level do we say, I'm sorry, your site's not new enough, or, you know, yes, we would like to link to you, or yes, we would like to connect these. And I think it's obviously a very fine line. You know, you can kind of go all or nothing, or just very specific. I think starting out, it almost has to be pretty specific, just because, like you said, there's so many different Blender sites. New Blender sites pop up every single day. And there's really no way of knowing what's going to be there tomorrow and what was there yesterday. And so it's basically impossible to just say, okay, we're going to link to every Blender site, and if you run a Blender site, just submit to us and we'll put it together. As much as we wish that idea would work, it really doesn't, unfortunately. I think it's been tried plenty of times.
What would it do, what you're mentioning now? Would it be a list of websites, or would it be an aggregator, or?
That's a very good question.
The Blender community-wide search engine, we discussed it a few times.
Well,
Why don't we have a search
been
box that searches everything?
You can put all the Blender site,
Uh-huh.
Blender site in Google Docs. Certain kind, just like Google. You can put just Blender Nation, Blender Artist, GG2, and so
Agree. Yeah.
certain kind just for Blender.
Would that help you guys have a search page for everything that's related to Blender instead of just Google? No?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess my first question would be the same as Tony's, is would it be any better than Google? And if not, then why the extra work, I guess? You know, if it would be significantly better than Google, then yes, I think it would be worth the work. Maybe somebody that is more familiar with search engines could answer that question better. I don't actually know.
Having a limited search for newbies would be better to filter out the kitchen variety blender.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Very true.
And I was also thinking, if you want to have a list of Blender websites, if you're that newbie user again, and you come to the page and you see 1,000 websites that do stuff with Blender.
Right, it kind of almost defeats the point
Yeah.
again.
So how could we make it easier for people to know where to go?
Go to blender.org, that's enough. No need you guys. Why would you,
Well, to find tutorials.
Well, the thing is, I mean, one of the
But
places.
if you use Maya, there's also no Maya.
Yeah, but when you pay $2,000 a license, you've got a phone number you can call, or at least a large help manual that comes with it some of the time.
Phone, Maya, hey Maya. Hey,
If I dropped $2,000, I would.
where can I find people on the web? Maya, please answer me.
But when I was starting out, I remember blenderartist.org. I got questions answered in like 15 minutes. You know.
BlenderArtist.org was where I think a lot of us got our start. Well, actually, yeah.
Well, I didn't on blender.nl. Long time ago. Sorry.
Best sites. Best site for it.
Uh, uh, could, well, Google does look at traffic and popularity and importance, so that's.
Yeah. You had a question?
Just a suggestion, you could ask people who have sites to add words. Google text when it goes websites. A single keyword that
So you tag your website as being
Essentially,
Blender 3D related.
essentially like a hashtag in Twitter.
Clever. Yeah. Okay.
so it can reference that easier if there were websites.
Sure. And you're saying on a site-specific basis or within one central place?
Yeah.
Most interesting information for me.
I think we had something like that when we worked at Not a Number. We called it the Blender Learning Path. So when you were new, you would go to the Blender Learning Path and you would see some steps you could take. Download, obviously, first tutorials, but also... Yeah. I will let Tom do that. That's just,
You have a question? No. Tony? Tony?
I was just saying,
No.
I think, yeah. I think maybe quality is important, but quality I haven't found to be as much of a problem as timeliness, update being recent enough. Because you Google something and you'll find a good tutorial or something for a feature from earlier versions.
Sometimes even only a month old and it's already out of date.
Yeah, that's another issue. Like, I mean, because it's been seen a lot, so Google sort of floats it, but it's a real old thing.
Google doesn't know.
It doesn't know.
Right. I mean, that's definitely the case. If you search, say, for Blender 3D tutorials or something along those lines, the top couple of hits are several years old, actually. And while the techniques and such are relevant, the specific content is not necessarily. And so I guess that's one of the underlying problems with just relying on Google.
I also found that Blender artists' archive pages go.
They do.
Searches a
They
lot
do.
more than the active pages.
Yeah.
What can do about that?
I don't even pretend to know anything about web development / SEO and.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Okay. But let me ask you another question. What do you think that this community is doing very well, and what do you think that this community could improve on? Uh-huh. You're overwhelmed as a new user. Okay. Maybe when you download Blender for the first time and you run it, it has like a suggestion where to start? Something like that? Blender for beginners. With a cleaned up interface. And,
Button 1, Blender Action. Button 2, Blender Artist.
yeah. Button 3, make beautiful animation.
Button 4, Mailton, Down.
That would be also a way to connect to tutorials where
I guess in response to that, the current problem with that, that as a feature, at least I feel would be really awesome. And I think a lot of users would feel the same way. I think you and I have had this discussion before, as far as how do you approach that? Because it has to be very general or Blender specific, and it has to be, you can't really have that as a third party. It basically almost has to be done through blender.org. But how do you, decide who does that, how it's done, and I know there's a lot of questions that come involved with that, but maybe that's a discussion that needs to be started.
is that something that would be useful?
Yes and no. I mean, there's probably people that can answer this better than I, but at least my view of what the wiki documentation is reference for this is how this tool works, not this is how you could use this tool.
Could we in the reference just have a couple of links to tutorials for that specific function?
But who keeps that updated? I mean, I think the idea is great, but we come into the exact same problem that we're having right now is who's responsible for updating that and how do you ensure that it continues to stay updated?
Yeah. Well, in the case of tutorials, that may not be so difficult because people like their work to be visible by others.
True.
So if tutorial writers know that it's okay to add your links to the function pages on the wiki, and we promote that, then they can do it for themselves.
But then almost from the wiki though, if we're talking about specific tools of here's how you use this tool or here's several examples of how you use it, I almost feel if we're targeting new users, you almost need to limit it to a single tutorial per tool. Because otherwise, if you have, this is how you use proportional editing, and then suddenly you have 30 different tutorials, you have no idea where to start. You get all kinds of opposing views as far as how to use it, and maybe you even cause more problems than you solve.
Your tutorial probably covers 50 different buttons anyway.
Right.
So, yeah.
But maybe also the other way around for somebody who likes to start. I would like to make something, and I have a box with all kinds of tools. Yeah, and which one should I use? That's also.
Also, I think you guys do really great, and you shouldn't worry too much about that you want to do everything and make everybody happy, all the new users and the old users and the 2.5 haters and the open source fanatics. And there's a whole enormous big community, and you can only serve a part of that. So stick to bringing the latest news. You can go to Generation to see what's going on.
But it will be really easy to add like a little graphic on all of those websites that say you can also go to the art community or go to tutorial lists or whatever. So I'm thinking more of, for me, doing something simple. I don't need more work specifically.
No, there's plenty of work to go around.
Yeah. but I would like to link things together better.
Well, I guess to make things very specific for a moment, for those of you that are on Blender Artist or are on other forms and have something that you like in the forms, aside from the actual form functionality, is there something that you look for on the form? You know, is it a gallery? Is it direct links to other sites? Is it you want it to be simple and strictly a form?
Having some kind of a radio where which would be kind of a banner sort of thing that all the websites would have. I think that would be a really simple kind of introductory method.
Basically creating almost a partnership between a series of sites.
Yeah.
Even as simple as just, I advertise you, you advertise me.
Yeah, it's kind of
What you also do is, as you said, you have a collection site where you have a list of all different sites that have tutorials on it and stuff like that. And let's say if you click on it, it opens a new page and it says, okay, this page is owned by blah blah blah, and it's great for beginners, or this is more for advanced users. It covers more these topics, so that you could do a classification on this collection website that helps new users or even advanced users specifically sites that is good for you.
That is at least simple, that separates it from the wiki.
Right.
But I think what also would be needed if this is that all the sites that have all these tutorials, they also have to do all these classifications. So that a new user, he can just go on the page, click on beginner tutorials, and then he has a list of very basic or intermediate tutorials, stuff like that.
Or one second. Where would you see that kind of collection site be based? Is it something that should be a site of its own on Blender Nation, on Blender Artist, on blender.org?
I think it could be easily, let's say, something in blender.org that just helps you quite quickly. I wouldn't do a site that is then owned by a specific person because he doesn't do a lot of things. It's only if a new page starts up, yes, include it in there. So do not too much administration. So you can put it somewhere where people easily find it, and I would suggest that would be Blender.org or something like that.
So basically just need somebody to moderate the website section or a new system for that section, just since it's so hard to update. Okay.
like we were discussing this before, this Blender ID. I mean, if you have this, what is it? It's 96,000 registered users, or 98,000 registered users.
Yeah.
Blender Artist. If you know, if we want to kind of think that if we would like to have as many of these users as possible, actually using the community websites, the other community websites, and then if it would be possible to somehow sync the accounts of these users compared to the Blender Artist, then one of the things that might actually happen is that you would actually in the Blender Artist profile you would be able to collect which sites these users are actually using.
We got to wrap up here real quick, but just to expand on what he said for just a second. Basically, Nathan Letwer has developed and is developing a system it's based on OpenID, where you can have a single login for all your different sites. Is that something that is of interest to people to be able to log into one Blender site and be logged into all the others? Yeah? Something to look into. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you.
hate whore moms who dress all slutty and embarrass their children. I remember how it was when I was a kid and my mom would dress like a whore and embarrass me. Don't they have any respect? Stupid cunt.